Welcome to a special series where we interview a host of notable people from the G100 Summit in Los Cabos, Mexico, on the moment that changed everything. Here, you'll learn their secrets to success, gain invaluable insights into what shaped their careers, and key takeaways on what it takes to be a leader in their field.
This is absolutely what we need. This is absolutely the future. We have to get on this.
Talk to people who think so beautifully about big, complex challenges.
G100 Los Cabos, Mexico, a special series on the moment that changed everything.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. You worked in venture capital for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Was ever a time in banking?
No, just startups before that.
Just startups before that. Then how did the space part of your life start?
Sure. So I was at a single family office in Texas running their venture strategy, and there's this thing called Y Combinator. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's
I'm not.
sort of the marquee incubator. They have demo days twice a year, and it's Silicon Valley's way to debut sort of 200 startups, and they do it in 2 batches a year, and we would attend, every year, and basically year over year, I'd see the number of space startups increase from like 0 to all of a sudden like 12 in one batch, and I thought, okay, this is pretty interesting. What's going on here? And I reached out to a family friend of mine, Dan Golden, who you know, and he put me in touch with a friend of his, Leon Alcali. We connected, and then Leon came to me a couple years later and said, hey, I'm starting a space fund with 2 other guys. Do you want to join us? And the 2 other guys were a guy named Phil Scully, who was an institutional investor for almost 15 years at the Capital Group companies, and then another guy, Dan Wallman, who's aerospace engineer, worked at Boeing, a group there called Phantom Works, and then actually worked under the leadership at Blue Origin doing propulsion and business development. So I thought I'd learned a little bit about what was happening in space, and I said, this is the time. So I made the jump. We launched our first fund, and now we're on to our second.
How's it going?
It's great. Space is sort of having a moment right now. Space and defense, I should say. We're sort of seeing this economy get birthed. Maybe I'll take a step back. The new space economy really started in 2017 when SpaceX figured out a way to re-land a rocket. And they brought the cost down from what used to be $30,000 a kilogram to send something to space to what it is today, which is less than $1,000 a kilo.
Okay.
And that's opened up the opportunity to send these mega constellations of satellites to orbit at a reliable and affordable cost. And that has birthed this economy, which is the new space economy, that is now building on infrastructure in orbit to support these large number of satellites going up. And then this supply chain that's feeding into launch to send these up. And the way we sort of view space and investing in space is once this infrastructure gets built out and the cost to access space continues to drop, and we ride this cost curve down, you'll have these new applications that come online which will allow for the right unit economics to make sense for new businesses to emerge. And part of the reason I left traditional venture capital is I thought about something similar, which was the compute curve, basically, in the late 80s and early 90s, and the internet, where you had large computers that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and then you had the personal computer come out, which was a couple $1,000s, and you had this sort of key inflection point, like the late 80s to the late 90s, where the largest companies as we know them today were birthed when they were riding this cost curve down of compute, and at some point applications came online, and it looked like Microsoft, it looked like Facebook, It looked like Airbnb and
Uber.
Lyft and Uber and all
Right.
these things. So we believe the same thing is going to happen in space. And for me, it kind of feels like the late 80s right now in space.
So every satellite that goes up, does it make money?
Yeah, or it's of national security importance, and
And therefore it's paid for.
it's paid
So-
for, yeah.
Right. So there is application. This isn't just like the cannabis industry where people see something that looks cool and just pour money at it.
No, the big sort of use cases for satellites today are providing internet globally. So Starlink has become a real business. They have about a million users, and they charge $109 a month or a year, I forget which one. And sort of the long-term vision of global coverage for internet is that we could get off cell towers and we could have access to this anywhere we go. Sort of second largest use cases or bucket is Earth observation. So taking images of, for agriculture, for precision farming, weather, looking at detecting methane leaks with not just images but other types of sensors from space, and hedge funds use it all the time. Looking at sort of the shadows of oil tankers to figure out how much oil is on those to predict the price and make trades on that.
You're kidding.
Swear.
Unbelievable.
So that is like the big use cases for why you need all those satellites up. And we're talking about markets that's hundreds of billions of dollars.
And what are you investing in? What do you like in all of this?
So our approach is really a portfolio approach. So we look to construct a portfolio across what we describe to be the value chain of space. It's sort of that picture I drew earlier. And we like to get exposure to key verticals or sub-verticals across the value chain that we believe have the opportunity to drive meaningful revenues in the short term. One thing we say is we don't invest in the exploration of space, we invest in the commercialization of space. Key differentiator.
Yeah.
And so we like to construct a portfolio that's diversified across these. We like and have sort of supported companies in propulsion, launch vehicles, satellites, space tourism, in-space manufacturing, the lunar economy, really all over. But we make sure to sort of find opportunities that have the ability to generate meaningful revenues to either one day be standalone companies or drive returns through M&A.
So within the company you've got, how do you view space? Is what we're doing on Earth, the number of things that we're doing that's killing the planet, that we can move into space? Is that sort of your view, or how do you view it?
Yeah, so I think there's like two schools of thoughts in space today. There's the Musk one, which is we're one cataclysmic event away from being extinct as a species. We need an insurance policy. That's Mars. Less ability to commercialize today because we're not quite there. The other school of thought is this O'Neillian, Gerard O'Neill was a famous physicist back in the day, which is Earth ought to be zoned light and residential, and space ought to be zoned heavy and industrial. And what we sort of pose a question internally, which is if it was free to go to space, if that cost per kilogram went down to $1 or $10, what would we do differently? Well, surely we just move the things that shouldn't be on Earth off Earth. Manufacturing, data centers. I mean, these are industries that use massive amounts of resources and pollute, and energy production. And we're starting to see the beginning of that because the unit economics are making sense, but at a high-priced, low-volume dynamic, as opposed to what we're not going to make tens of millions of iPhone cases in orbit yet, because the unit economics aren't there. But we might make Z-band fiber optic cables, because you could leverage the environment of zero gravity and space being a vacuum to create a lot higher quality fibers that are more uniform, that results in a higher data transmission rate, which then results in less of a need for amplifiers in the bottom of the ocean for moving internet.
Daniel Kleinmann, thank you. This is the moment that changed everything. We're filming from Los Cabos in Mexico at the Genius 100 Summit. Daniel, thanks. Will you come back again?
For you anytime.
Hey, thanks.
To learn more about how you can support G100 initiatives, visit genius100visions.com.